Hello, everybody. Andrew Fantasia here, and welcome back to another of our wonderful patented review marathons. Is this your first one? Welcome. Here's how they work. Every 3 months, I sit down and try to watch as many movies as I can that I've never seen before. But the catch is, those movies have to all be at least 1 year old by the time I watch them. And then we come here at the end of a 3 month block and I go through them and review them all as fast as I can for all of you. Before we begin, please like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. And hey, if you happen to be a fantasy fan, well, guess what? I got some news for you, amigo. I am a fantasy writer. These are my novels, We Were Wizards. I self-publish these. You can find these on Amazon right now in hardcover, in paperback, and in ebook. They are my pride and joy. They've got wizards, they've got magic, they've got all sorts of crazy elves and dark lords and things like that. So if you're already going through withdrawal because Rings of Power Season 2 is over, I've got your back. Okay, now it's time to look at all the films I watched between the months of July and September. Full disclosure, it was a rough summer. It was a very, very rough summer, and I did not have a lot of time to see movies, either old or new. I haven't been to a movie theater since, I think, July, and it's October now. So usually I'm going once every couple weeks, but that's not the case anymore, and it probably won't be for the foreseeable future. However, I did manage to sit down, and in those 3 months, I got to see 21 movies that I had never seen before. And now we're going to talk about them at a brisk, breezy pace. Here we go. Cure. Okay, Cure is one of the most downright chilling movies I've ever watched. It starts off looking like a typical serial killer versus detective potboiler, but it very quickly veers off those tracks onto an unpredictable dirt road. And that dirt road winds through a dark forest full of scary noises where dread hangs in the air as thick as a maritime fog. If you don't like ambiguous endings, you ain't gonna be a happy camper with this one. I certainly would have liked it more if it was just a bit more transparent about some things, but the chills were nightmarish and the mystery palpable, and the villain will make your skin crawl. Death Spa. God bless schlocky 1980s horror. I don't know where my life would be without it, and frankly, I don't want to know. Death Spa is about a gym/health spa where a series of gruesome accidents lead to a string of violent injuries and deaths. And the culprit? Do you really want to know? Okay. The killer is the ghost of the spa owner's paraplegic former wife seeking vengeance from beyond the grave by sexually possessing her twin brother and using him to sabotage the gym's high-tech computer system. Don't look at me. You're the one who wanted to know. Donnie Darko. If you went to high school in the early 2000s, Donnie Darko is probably the film you remember being that one movie all the film geeks and emo kids were always talking about. Apart from that, it's got high-concept time travel, an imaginary talking rabbit man, and some absolutely baffling moments like when Drew Barrymore's English teacher tells the new girl in class to sit next to whichever boy she finds cutest. I like this because it's creative, but I also feel like the writer-director is an alien who's only ever met humans a handful of times. Just watch it and you'll see what I mean. Flashdance. Flashdance feels like it was written by someone whose heart was in the right place, but they had never actually written anything before. It's just got a strange quality to it that you can't really understand unless you've seen it. For me, the best thing about Flashdance, besides Jennifer Beals' dreamy brown eyes, is the opening moments. In a tour de force of gritty, Rocky-like cinematography, we see Beals ride her bike to work as the sun rises over Pittsburgh, all to the opening notes of the titular song. And I gotta say, that's some damn good movie magic. The Game. I'm having trouble figuring out how I feel about David Fincher's The Game. I get that it's all one giant, elaborate, Truman Show-esque mega-conspiracy at Michael Douglas's expense, figuratively and literally. But the movie ends with the thesis that the titular game is meant to unscrooge the disgustingly rich, and I just feel like it never really earned that ending. It tried, and I applaud it for that, but something's just missing here. On the other hand, the opening credits of The Game and the opening credits of Succession are almost identical, so that's pretty rad, I guess. Hotel Transylvania. A cute concept with some good moments, but it's overall a loud and obnoxious thing that never stops to take the time to be anything other than a quick, easy kids movie. Remember that one amazing page of that Where's Waldo book where it was a bunch of witches and vampires throwing a party? This is just 90 minutes of that. Midnight Cowboy. This has been one of the most glaring gaps in my film watching resume for a very long time. Coincidentally, I happened to see Zoe Kravitz talk about it in the Criterion Closet. Then 5 minutes later, I opened Tubi and boom, there it was. Even more coincidentally, I recently began writing a new novel that bears a lot of eerie similarities to Midnight Cowboy. But with that preamble out of the way, this was hauntingly good. It's a terrifying look at urban poverty and cruel indifference, full to bursting with so many different flavors of lost souls. I cannot stop thinking about it. Nosferatu the Vampire. I honestly had no idea Werner Herzog remade F.W. Murnau's film, but once I found out, it made perfect sense because it's a match made in heaven. The atmosphere is just on point, and the build-up to the reveal of Count Dracula's castle is pure gold. Robert Eggers' remake is probably going to end up feeling a lot like this, and honestly, I could not be more okay with that. The Dracula story is a very Central European story, so it's nice to finally see a bunch of Central European artists telling it. On the Buses. In a thankfully bygone era, you could call something comedy just for being wildly misogynistic. This fact is the foundation on which On the Buses was built. Spinning off from a popular British sitcom, it is admittedly good for a cheap laugh or two, but that's on the rare occasion when the laughs aren't happening at the expense of the female characters. If you like slapstick and incredibly British accents, you might find something worthwhile here. Otherwise, the best part of this movie is seeing the old glass bottles of HP sauce. Rear Window. I honestly thought I had seen this before, but it ended up being one of those rare cases where a movie's sheer cultural weight, mixed with the endless Simpsons parodies, only made me think I'd seen it. I'm sure a lot of people felt the same way watching Citizen Kane for the first time. And I think I can safely put Rear Window neck and neck with Psycho for the best piece of work in Hitchcock's oeuvre. I honestly don't know which one I love more. Thankfully, this is the real world and not Twitter, so I don't have to choose one. Anyway, best set design in a motion picture? I think maybe Rotten Tail. An ultra low budget adaptation of an ultra low budget graphic novel. I don't think I've ever seen a D-list movie with so many subplots. The main hero is a nerdy scientist who gets bitten by a radioactive rabbit and becomes the foul-mouthed, superpowered Rotten Tail. Then he goes for revenge against his high school bully, who's now an evil televangelist trying to demolish a church that belongs to Rotten Tail's girlfriend's father because of gold or something. And then there's a chewing gum factory trying to use rabbit DNA to make a libido serum, and a mad scientist there reanimates the corpse of an evil general that Rotten Tail killed and turns him into a cyborg, and it's just like, what am I watching? 2 stars. Spookies. What do you get when a studio leaves a movie unfinished so someone else picks up the slack and tries to integrate new footage with the old? If your answer is a mess, then you're partially right. Yes, Spookies is wildly incoherent, but it never stops being entertaining. It's just a bunch of random people wandering through a haunted house while an evil warlock in the attic tries to kill them. There's a different monster in pretty much every room, including zombies aplenty and a crazy witch puppet. By the time you get to the farting muckmen in the wine cellar, you're having the time of your life. It all adds up to an 80s creature effects extravaganza that is so bananas, it needs to be seen to be believed. And Spookies makes a hell of a great treat during the Halloween season. This is free on Tubi right now. Please go watch it. Strangers on a Train. It's Alfredo Hitchcocko doing what he does best, building suspense with a cast of morally ambiguous characters and straight-up psychopaths. The titular train plays a way smaller part than I thought it would. I went in expecting a Murder on the Orient Express kind of romp, but that doesn't stop this from being one cool, efficient, and brutal piece of fiction, with one of the darkest death scenes Hitchcock ever filmed. Also, tennis! Like, a lot of tennis. Tetris. Did they take creative liberties with history? Yes. There is a friggin' car chase in this film, but damn it if Tetris isn't just a charming, silly, wild tale about the Mostly actual events leading up to the release of the most popular puzzle game of all time. Your kids will probably zone out since half the dialogue is about the legal minutiae of purchasing rights, but kids are too busy playing Fortnite anyway, so they're fine. The Tetris movie is as satisfying as an actual game of Tetris. Love it. 13 Ghosts. Watching this served as a stark reminder of just how unapologetically stupid early 2000s horror was. Like, fully catering to the lowest common denominator, stupid, with no room anywhere in the script for a single nuance. Having said that, the opening showed promise. It set up this cool world of paranormal hunters going after dangerous ghosts, kind of like if Michael Crichton had made Ghostbusters. And that concept alone is awesome enough to launch a franchise like Helen launching ships, but they squander that potential real fast. And we just end up with a tepid movie that's seizure-inducing at the best of times. But oh, what could have been. Tokyo Story. Cited by many as one of the best Japanese films and just all-around best motion pictures of all time, you could accurately sum up Tokyo Story by calling it Cats in the Cradle, the movie. It also had some echoes of King Lear, albeit if Lear was just a regular guy instead of a king, and with a whole lot less eye gouging. It's such a simple story that it's really difficult to explain without spoiling anything, but it's heartbreaking and very frustrating and beautifully shot. And by the time it's over, it'll make you want to hug your parents. That's all I can say. The Toxic Avenger. It's pretty much the Citizen Kane of R-rated 80s schlock, and it takes place in New York, so the fact that I haven't seen this yet is a travesty. And it is absolutely goofy and tasteless and disgusting, and everything a good Lloyd Kaufman picture should be. The fight scenes alone go on for so long and just keep getting more brutal and insane. This is Troma at its very, very finest. And if you don't know what Troma is, look up Troma. You're welcome. The Toxic Avenger Part 2. You wouldn't think that there was more fun to be wrung out of this grotesque dish rag, but you'd be wrong. Troma delivers twice the mayhem, twice the carnage, twice the toxicity, twice the everything, really. Hearing actor Ron Fazio's sweet, soft-spoken voice come spewing out of the Toxic Avenger's hideous, lopsided mouth never stops being funny. This time, Toxie goes to Japan on an ill-fated quest to find his estranged father. What follows is more absolute chaos, culminating in a brawl where Toxie uses the decapitated head of a swordfish as an actual sword. This is cinema. The Toxic Avenger Part 3, The Last Temptation of Toxie. So apparently after they finished Part 2, Troma realized they had way too much footage for just one movie, so they slapped together a third one in the same calendar year, and boy does the lack of effort show. Part 3 is a huge step down. It's less fun, less coherent, and less interesting. The entire third act is just 30 minutes of non-stop screaming, and the first two acts aren't exactly a quiet stroll through a library either. I guess you could theoretically watch these two as a double feature like I did, but trust me, they fit together about as smoothly as the Toxic Avenger's own body parts. Citizen Toxie, The Toxic Avenger 4. Shame on me for thinking they'd been scraping at the bottom of the barrel with Part 3, but here we are. Toxic Avenger 4 mostly ignores Parts 2 and 3, with the original actor coming back to play Toxie and a significant steer away from the other sequels' interconnected plot lines. This time, there's a parallel universe where everyone has an evil doppelganger, and the Toxic Avenger ends up swapping universes with his evil twin, the Noxious Offender, and look, if you've stuck around to movie number 4, you know what to expect by now. And yet this fourth entry will still shock and appall you. UHF. I tuned in more so because I'm just intrigued by the idea of a UHF television station than I am by the idea of Al Yankovic running one. I'm not really a Weird Al fan, and I'm not really a fan of zany Zucker Brothers type movies, but dadgummit if I didn't end up laughing way more than I thought I was going to. There are some good chuckles to be had here. This could have been way worse. I know that doesn't sound like a compliment, but it is. UHF is FUN. And Weird Al makes 21. That's where we leave off for this review marathon. It's definitely one of the smallest ones we've done. Just that's the way things turned out. Thankfully, though, it is October, and in October, my heart and my soul starts pumping for some scary movies. So I'm going to do my best to watch as many as possible this month. So that means maybe when we meet back again in January for the next review marathon, we will have a whole lot more than 21. Can't make promises, but I'm pretty confident it won't be as low as this one. Watch now, I'm going to make a fool of myself and it'll be like 12 or something. Anyway, that'll do it for this review marathon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check me out on my other channel, our sister channel here, Digital Charcuterie, where I spend most of my time talking about Marvel United and DC Superheroes United because it's a board game I have become obsessed with over the past couple of years. And of course, tune in back here for the next review marathon and the next video and whatever it is that we end up doing. Until then, my friends, adios.